The first thump happened late several weeks ago, right above my head and incredibly loud. Of course, I woke with a start, but after a thorough inspection I found nothing. The next night was the same, as was the case for the several weeks that followed. Every night there was a thump, and every night I was woken, looked, and found nothing. During the second week, I realized that it had been getting louder, and soon every thump shook the entire house. It was the end of the third week when I found the book. It sat there at my doorstep, a paperback book with a picture of a smiling green pudgy creature on its cover. "Things That Go Bump" was written above the grotesque being in bright purple lettering. Walking inside, I opened the book to where bookmarks stuck out. "Thumpers," the chapter heading said, and I nearly threw the book out of anger at the horrible prank someone had decided to play. "Thumpers," I read on, "are malevolent creatures that delight in disrupting the sleep of their victims. They start with a light thumping, eventually escalating until the noise is so great that it will shake the home of the victim. Thumpers will eventually grow bored and move on, the victim only having a month of difficulty sleeping. However, female thumpers are especially dangerous, because they only grow bored when they're about to give birth, and the victim can wind up food for the freshly birthed thumpers." I stopped there, done with the nonsense I was reading, and tossed the book in the trash. I wish I hadn't, because that night there was no thumping. I laid awake waiting for it, hoping to catch the prankster in the act, but it never came. Instead, the sound of scurrying came from all around me, and as I moved toward the door, I felt small fangs dig into my ankles. I fell to the ground, trying to swat the hordes of thumpers off, but it was too late. Within seconds, my vision began to blur, and the pain as the thumpers tore into my flesh diminished. The last thing I saw before blacking out was the cover of that damned book, sitting in my trash a few feet away, and the smiling face of the green creature on its cover. My foot pressed the pedal as hard as it could. I didn't care if the storm outside put me at risk, because what I'd left behind me was worse. I glanced in the seat beside me, spotting the book with the smiling green creature on its cover, and threw it out the window. This was supposed to be a simple vacation. Just me and my pal. Now it was a nightmare, and my pal, well, I wished he was dead, but I knew he wasn't. The book had told us that much.
Puddle snakes,
my friend had read from the book aptly named "Things That Go Bump."
hunt by hiding themselves in deep puddles. When their prey comes close to the 10 to 20 foot creatures, reach their long, razor-sharp mandibles out of their puddle and remove their prey's means of escape, namely their legs. They then proceed to swallow their prey whole, after which they hide again to digest. While digesting, their prey is left alive. Puddle snakes love to feel their prey fight inside their bellies while they are digested.
It was then that we saw the puddle. It took up the entire road, and we had to stop to check how deep it was. My friend walked over toward the puddle, while I watched from the driver's seat. I should have known. I should have realized what was going on, but I pushed it away, thinking it crazy. It happened so fast. 1 second, my friend was looking at me, and the next, his legs were bouncing off the windshield. As the thing rose out of the puddle to engulf him, I turned the car around and ran. The rain has gotten worse since then. I can barely see the road. I won't stop though, not until I'm so far away there's no way it could get me. There's a bump as the tires hit a pothole and I lose control of the car. I feel the car go over the embankment, and with a loud crunch it collides with a tree. Groggy and aching all over, I force myself to push open the door, and I fall into the dirt. A few feet away, I see something that makes me gasp. A large puddle. I watch it begin to ripple as I remember the words at the bottom of the page in the book.
Beware, where there's one, there's many.
It wasn't your average rainy day. It was a real storm. Everything in town was closed, and I was alone in my apartment. I sat at the dinner table eating a nice meal, listening closely to the rain's fingers tapping on my window. I was chewing on a piece of steak when the lights first flickered. It was the ornate oak lamp by my television, the only light I had on. I ignored it. The piece of junk only served as an ornament and was always blinking. The light died again. I was in the dark. I sighed and looked for a flashlight or candle, but tripped over something on the hardwood floor. The lights came back on, and I saw the book lying open face down in the middle of the room. It looked like one of those children's books filled with crappy ghost stories. On the cover, a crude green ogre was drawn, and the bright purple title, Things That Go Bump, was jarring to the eye. I didn't recall buying it, but decided to check just in case. It was open to a page with bold heading that read Shade Spiders. It told about these jet-black, arachnid-like creatures that nested in light-producing appliances to absorb energy. I smiled. The book wasn't half bad. I read the rest aloud as I took a seat in the armchair next to the oak lamp. At first, the appliance they occupy will flicker lightly, but as the nest grows, the flickering will get worse and worse. Once there are enough of them, the light will go out, at which time they will devour most creatures in proximity to their nest. That's when the lights went out. For weeks, people of my village had been hearing screams, calls for help, and crying coming from the depths of Blackmire Wood. We'd drawn lots and I was the unlucky one, so when the sunlight began to fade, I pulled my pack higher on my shoulder, gripped my torch, and stepped into the quickly darkening trees. Blackmire smelled like something dead, and the air was thick with fog. Normally, my people never went into Blackmire. Most believed the forest was filled with creatures that feasted on human flesh, and the rest claimed to have seen them from the safety of the village. Truthfully, I hoped the sounds wouldn't be heard tonight. That way I could head back and sleep in my nice warm bed. However, no sooner had I fancied that thought, when I heard the faint sounds of crying in the distance. Following the sounds, I came to a massive door set in stone that was black and as smooth as glass. Pushing open the door, I found myself in a massive hollow tower, with a set of stairs spiraling up into the darkness. I closed the door behind me and listened closely. The sounds were coming from the top of the tower, so I began to ascend the steps. I'm not sure how long I was climbing, but by the time I'd reached the top, I was breathing heavily. I pushed open the heavy trap door and climbed onto the top of the massive tower. It was empty. Not a single living thing sat in the cold wind on the top of the tower. The only thing up there was a small, peculiar book, whose bright purple title, Things That Go Bump, stood out against the dark tower's glassy stone. I opened the book and began to read. Doomtops are ancient tricksters who care little for human life. They often lure their victims in with cries of help, and once trapped there is no chance of escape. Victims of a doomtop will often starve or commit suicide. Panicked, I went to the trap door, only to find it gone. I was trapped. I ran to the edge and began to scream for help out into the darkness of the night. I came home to find it sitting on the couch, staring at me. I almost thought some small child had broken into my house, but as I approached, I realized I was mistaken, and my breath caught. From the neck down, it looked like a well-dressed child, wearing a prim school uniform and holding a string attached to a smiling red balloon. But its face lacked any features. Eyes, nose, mouth, ears, all gone. Instead, scribbled on with what looked like marker, was a messily drawn smiley face. The marker ink was running slightly, as though splashed by water after drawing it, and the eyes were misaligned as though they were drawn from an unusual angle. I went to leave, but a low growl rising behind me made me stop. I turned to face the thing once again, my hands trembling and my heart thumping in my ears. It pointed to a chair nearby, and after I'd sat down it reached into its pocket. The creature that filled my heart with dread handed me a book, Things That Go Bump, by Katrina Dowry Rose. The low growl came again, and rose until I opened the book and began to read the words on the dirty page. There are several very important things that one should never do when facing a happy reader. First, don't try to leave. A happy reader does not like to be disrespected. Next, don't stare at its face. A happy reader will take offense to this immediately. Finally, should you ever start reading to one, then don't stop. Happy readers love being read to, but once the story ends, feeding time begins. That was it. That was the end of the page. As the thing stood, I could have sworn the balloon's smile widened. Author's Notes, written on the inside cover of a book called Things That Go Bump. Dear reader, I hope you are well. However, considering that this book has come into your possession, the outlook is very bad. This book is a bane, a curse upon whoever ends up in its presence. My name, as you may know, is Katrina Dowry Rose. In 1994, I lost 4 weeks of time while working a dead-end job as a waitress. When I woke up from this lapse in time, I had written the very book that you are reading right now. I was desperately in need of money, so instead of questioning what happened to me, I sent the book to a publisher, and they immediately accepted it. In 1999, the publishing company fell into bankruptcy when the CEO suffered a fatal accident. At that time, only one prototype book had been completed, and it was sent to me as an apology for being unable to complete the job. It was then that the nightmares started. At first, it was simply a series of symbols floating in space, accompanied with a voice telling me to try again, but the dreams soon got worse. Soon, I found myself trapped inside an abandoned city, with thousands of voices begging for me to help them. During my nightly forays, I eventually became aware of something chasing me through the darkened streets under the two-moon sky. The closer it got, the more insistent and violent the voices became. Soon I was waking up in a cold sweat and trying to find ways of keeping myself awake. But every time I did sleep, I found myself in that city, running from a creature so terrifying that its terror followed me into the waking hours. As the weeks passed, I got the feeling that should I do what the voices were telling me and send the book to another publisher, lots of people would get hurt. Tonight I will be taking the book outside and burning it. I'm not sure what's going on, but the book is at the center of it, and I must destroy it before others get hurt. I'm writing this here in case I do not succeed. Whatever you do, don't read this book, don't keep this book, and never make a copy. If you have the chance, then destroy this book. There's something evil inside it, something ancient and powerful. I can only hope that this message burns up with the rest of the pages. It was the canker fiends, I swear. I couldn't stop myself. The man looked up at me, his shoulders shook, and he had dark circles under his eyes.
What kind of fool does he take you for?
Canker fiends. I glanced at my notepad again to double check. Right. The small creatures that whispered in your ear to kill your girlfriend. So he picked up the bat and brought it down on her head, not once, but 15 times. By the time you were done, her head looked like a hamburger. I slammed my hand on the table. What kind of fool do you take me for? I saw the panic rise in his eyes. He deserved to panic. People like him were despicable. I had been a police officer for 12 years and had never seen anything like this. So I'm guessing the canker fiend made you eat her then. It told you to take whopping bites out of what was left of her head. Is that what you expect us to believe? No. Oh God, no, the man gagged. They don't work like that. Coercing their victim into murder makes them ravenous, so the canker fiends eat some of the dead body. I was in shock at what I had done. I couldn't stop it.
Does he have proof? Proof would be nice.
I closed the notepad and pressed my fingers to my temples. Let's say I believe you. There's no way that a court of law would. Do you have any proof? Proof would be nice. The man's eyes lit up and he snapped his fingers. The book! Before all this started, there was a book that explained everything to me. It should be on the bookshelf. It's called Things That Go Bump.
Now he's mocking you. They always mock you.
There was no book at the crime scene. Are you mocking me? I stood, pulled out my gun, and shot the man in the face. Found. One tattered diary. Discovered lying face down next to Verdalaga, a lake near the village of Hunter's Hollow. The village came to our attention after the entire population vanished with no explanation. Our investigation soon led us to a small house at the edge of the lake. The diary was found after we began an extensive search of the grounds. The diary pages were mostly destroyed by water, but the last few pages survived the water damage. The following is a transcript of what was found in those pages. July 12th, 1999. Annie came over today. She's so considerate and beautiful. If she wasn't already married, I would ask her out. Too bad her oblivious husband treats her like dirt. I just want to punch that guy in the face when I see them arguing. Annie was checking to see if I had any bananas because the supermarket had run out. We spent a good 2 hours talking, but when she left, she had the rest of my bananas and a smile. It's so good to see her smile. July 14th, 1999. I found a great book at the library yesterday. I'd gone there with Annie to get her mind off her missing husband. It's hard to pretend to feel bad about his disappearance, because Annie deserved better. Annie deserves me. Things That Go Bump, that was the name of the book. It was full of information on fictional creatures and was incredibly creepy. My favorite was the creature known as the Depths. Apparently the microscopic creatures infect people through the water supply and then take control of their host. They walk them to their nest, a large body of water, and drown them. Afterwards they feed on what's left. Fantastic. July 16th, 1999. I don't understand women. Her husband treated her like crap, but still she was heartbroken when he left. Now for all I know, she's gone to look for him. The police don't even know what happened, but it looks like she just up and left. Her oven was still on and everything. Well, I've had enough of women. She can just stay with him for all I care. I need to cool down. I'll take a walk to the supermarket. Perhaps they'll have a new shipment of bananas. I've really been craving them lately. Due to this information, agents have been advised not to drink the water here, and the book is under investigation. Its whereabouts unknown. Things That Go Bump, page 12. Name. Concept. Danger ranking 9. Chance of survival is slim. Concepts are incredibly small, ranging from 1.5 to 3 centimeters in length from beak to tail. Their head is similar to a hummingbird's, except lizard-like in appearance. This includes a long, hollow, needle-like beak that is razor-sharp. Its body is small and light, held up by 2 powerful leathery wings. Because of its lack of legs, these wings are always in movement. Concepts are adept at hiding, their skin able to shift pigmentation to match their surroundings. Also, concepts may become incorporeal to travel through solid objects. A concept uses its needle beak to break the skin of its victim and drain enough blood to sustain itself and its unborn young for a day. Its beak is also used to inject a numbing agent while it feeds so that the victim is unaware of the small creature. While it doesn't drain enough blood to kill in a single setting, if enough of the creatures come together and feed on a single host, they can drain their victim completely within minutes. However, since concepts are primarily loners, this is unlikely to happen. The numbing agent is highly toxic to humans and takes several days to fully dissipate from the bloodstream. Even in small doses, it can cause symptoms like emotional stress, confusion, boredom, and intense feelings of disbelief in the existence of concepts. In high enough doses, it can cause elevated heart rate, panic, followed quickly by complete organ shutdown. Because a concept must feed every day, and will stay with a food source until it is drained, falling victim to a concept has a 99.98 fatality rate. Concepts travel along a web of information. People who have learned of the existence of concepts, or have thought about the idea of concepts, automatically become connected to each other. It is unknown how the concept is able to sense this web of information, but it can move along the strands with enough speed to circumvent the globe in a matter of minutes. Should you find any information on concepts, then it is imperative that you destroy it immediately. In one hand I held a small paperback book, and in the other I held a miniature antique fork. The dust on the floor wafted into a small cloud as I put the book down to wipe the blood from my forehead. So much bloodshed over such a small thing. My eyes fell on the fork. Why am I the only one unaffected? Agent Flair, this is your last warning. Hand over the fork or we're coming in hot. The voice from outside echoed through the large factory. I recognized the voice immediately as my partner and friend, Philip Strode. My name is Marcus Flair. I was sent here by the agency because it looked like the book had resurfaced again. They were right, of course. They were hardly ever wrong. I had had a team of 50 with me. Now I'm alone, and it's all because of this small fork. This has to end. If this is the book that has my superiors afraid, then these pages may hold the clue to stopping this. Once I have the fork, you can leave. All I need is the fork, you will be unharmed. Philip again, but I knew he wasn't himself. None of them were. Holding the fork in my mouth, I opened the book. It didn't take me long to find something that matches the current situation. Pressure feeders. Pressure feeders are small creatures that feed off the violent emotions of those around them. In order to keep themselves fed, they take the form of small, invaluable objects, and release a powerful pheromone that makes anyone nearby want the pressure feeder to the point of violence. A pressure feeder can remain an object for many years before releasing its deadly pheromone. The fork thing hit the floor with a clang as I jumped to my feet. My hands grasped my gun and brought it about, aimed at the horrible creature. I had just one bullet, but I rarely missed. I wasn't even sure if this would have any effect, but I had to try. The door behind me swung open, and I felt the bullets tear into my flesh before I heard the loud bangs. My hand shook, and my vision blurred, as more pain was followed by another bang. My fingers pressed the trigger as the world faded to black. Circles. The charcoal between my fingers kept drawing circles on the Institute's walls. Connect them with a simple line and add some handlebars. It was a simple bicycle, just an ordinary one that had nothing to do with the disappearance of my beloved Ben. The bicycles covered the walls of my cell, with more joining the herd every day. I wouldn't stop looking until I found my son. I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't. The door to my cell opened slowly, and a well-dressed man stepped inside. He had a handsome face, and his short brown hair only complemented the scar that ran along his jawbone. I could smell his cologne, and had to cover my nose. He wore it so heavy that it was almost visible in the air. Norma Hogan, I am Agent Flair, and I'd like to talk to you about your son. His voice was way too young for his look, but it fit well enough. Ben. I could feel the charcoal pulling at my arm again, and resumed drawing another bicycle on the wall. Yes, Ben. Can we talk about Ben? It really wasn't a question, but I was too busy to notice the urgency in his voice. He's gone. The man on the bicycle took him. That's what the book calls them, bicycles. Makes sense now, but before my son was taken, it was such a silly name. Silly name. The charcoal in my fingers snapped. Please tell me more about these bicycles. I need more charcoal. I stare at the broken piece in my hand. First the info, then I'll get you some more. Bicycles are largely unknown. They take the form of bicycles and ride around parks to lure children in. It's unknown whether bicycles use some kind of hypnosis or persuasion to lure the children in. But as soon as a single child sits on the seat, it's over. Most children that are caught by a bicycle are never seen again, but the ones that are. Ben wasn't seen again, though. He wasn't. It wasn't Ben in the photo the police showed me. Ben wasn't that flexible. Ben was lost, taken by the man on the bicycle. The man with the tall hat and the small mouth. The man with the hollow eyes. The boy in the photo wasn't my Ben. Same hair, same freckles, same cheeks, but it wasn't my Ben. I felt charcoal pressed into my palm, and I began drawing another bicycle. I'm sorry I was too late, Norma. I didn't even hear the door shut as the agent made his way out. She sat in the bus seat in front of me. She had to be somewhere between 5 and 6, the perfect age for me. She was alone, and judging by the state of her short blonde hair, she'd been that way for a long time. Good. That means no one will miss her. All I need to do was get her someplace more private, and then all my wildest dreams would be fulfilled. Tonight was looking to be a good night. I leaned forward in the seat, unable to wait before I saw the rest of her. She sat there, a book in her lap, that she began to read. aloud.
Light feet hate humans and use them as their primary food source. They are incredibly aggressive, slowly tearing their victims to shreds before consumption. They only come out at night and tend to stay hidden. As such, there is no well-documented information regarding their appearance. All that's known is that.
She stopped suddenly and turned to look at me.
Hello, mister.
I hesitated only a second before speaking with my most friendly voice. Hello, lass. What's your name?
Rosalind. I'm 5 and 4 months.
She gave me her brightest smile. Wow, that's amazing. I smiled as the bus came to a stop in front of a darkened park.
Sorry, I have to go now.
With that, she closed her book, stood, and walked from the bus. I quickly got out after her and followed her into the park. This was the perfect place. What more could I ask for? This would be it. I could feel the warmth spread throughout me as I watched her stop under a street lamp. I slowly approached, pulling the cloth soaked in chloroform. It happened so quickly. One moment I was reaching out for her, the next I was thrown nearly 12 feet into the air, only to slam into the ground legs first. The sound of my legs breaking ripped through the air, followed by my screams. Rosalind stood a few feet away, staring at me as I lay there unable to move.
Are you sure you can't hurt me, Spot?
She looked behind me, and I heard a low growl followed by thumps as the street lamp hopped into view. It leaned over and lightly patted Rosalind on the head. I watched as she leaned into the pat with a smile.
Okay, I believe you. Hurry up, I'm starving.
My eyes widened as the thing that looked like a street lamp began to hop over. I used to be normal. Boring, ordinary Roger Mackenzie, the son of a beekeeper who barely made enough to support his son. My mother died when I was young, and my father mourned by throwing himself into his work. He neglected me, his only son, because looking at me hurt too much. The similarities between me and her would make him sick with grief. I know, because he told me when I was 18, and then asked me to move out. My fingers tap on the book in my lap as I watch the children flood from the school. When he steps from the building, I smile. The young boy, Kevin, was already famous for having a college-level understanding of calculus before graduating from elementary, and was already getting offered college scholarships. I watch as 2 large boys push Kevin against the wall. School life had been tough for me. I barely survived elementary, and high school only got worse. I could still feel the bruises and cuts. I would never forget how it felt to be pushed into the pavement while they took what little money my father had left me. However, high school was also when I met the man. He showed me how to be special. He had put me on the track to becoming what I am today. You're lucky I saw them start. I pulled Kevin up to his feet. The 2 larger students had run off as I approached. Thanks, Mr. Mackenzie. See you tomorrow. I watch as he walked toward the bus stop. Tomorrow will be the day that I become even more special. Sitting on the bench outside the school, I opened the book titled Things That Go Bump to my page. Roger Mackenzie is the only immune in constant activation. He works exclusively for that man, but chooses his own targets. Roger preys on small children that have been labeled as gifted. When he consumes the flesh of one of those special children, he obtains all of their talents for himself. Because of this, Roger is incredibly smart, athletic, and dangerous. I've read that passage 10 times already, and it still hasn't gotten old.
Welcome. I'm so glad you could make it.
The politician destined to bring the agency out of debt was a large man, who only looked larger standing next to his diminutive assistant. He had a full beard, and his chest hair poked out of the top of his shirt. In fact, the only place the man didn't have any hair was on his head. Marcus took a seat across from the politician. Thanks for seeing us, Mr. West. I am Agent Flair, and this, he motioned to the man who had taken the seat next to him, is Director Krager.
Oh, I know who you are. The most celebrated agent in the agency and the agency director, Matt Krieger.
Politician West took a seat.
Not that you don't have the upper hand, Agent Flair. Your immunity to the book and its manifestations is a step ahead of all the other agents.
Director Krieger cleared his throat.
Even with his immunity, he still hasn't been able to gather enough information, or find an effective way to stop the book, so the government's shutting down the entire project.
The large politician pulled a cigar from his pocket, ripped off the tip, and rested it in his mouth.
Well, that's why we're here, right? So that I can tell you that I'm willing to fund all future agency projects.
Agent Flair leaned forward. You're going to fund us? That's amazing. I don't even know what to say. Just then, the assistant pushed her glasses up her nose and spoke out.
One moment.
The politician leaned back while his assistant spoke.
We're not prepared to fund the project until you've met our requirements. These are non-negotiable.
She took a deep breath and then continued.
Our first requirement is that we make an inspection of every facility. Mr. West isn't interested in funding an agency that he doesn't know the workings of. Is that sufficient?
Director Krieger glanced at Marcus Flair and then back at Mr. West.
That is a perfectly understandable concern. You'll have full access to our facilities and all information we gathered thus far.
I'm glad you said that, Krieger.
The politician spoke up again.
My father used to say that a man should be careful with his information. Information is the only thing separating us from the pigs.
So then you'll fund us? Agent Flair went to stand.
Not quite.
It was the assistant again.
There is another requirement.
Agent Flair sat down again. Anything. The assistant pushed her glasses up on her nose again.
We require the retirement of Agent Flair and all of their immunes, followed by their immediate execution.
Marcus Flair was on his feet in a second. What the hell? What kind of a demand is that?
You need to sit down right now, son.
Mr. West's voice was stern and powerful.
I'm not in the business of killing people without a good reason.
Agent Flair sat down again. It better be a damned good one. The politician pulled a paper from his pocket and laid it on the table in front of him.
2 years ago, I came home to find my daughter's corpse lying in the middle of the living room floor, with this paper crumpled in her hand. This book took my little girl, and since then, I've done everything I could to track down the book this page belongs to and destroy it.
Marcus reached for the paper, only to have it pulled away by Mr. West.
Not yet. You need to understand that without this piece of paper, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The agency would be dead. However, it's because of this paper that I require such a high price.
He handed the paper to his assistant, who began to read.
The immunes. Some people are born with immunity to the book's power and creatures within. An immune, while they look human, are actually sleeper agents for the man. At any time, they can be activated, and while activated, they are controlled by the man. They will do its bidding until the—
A loud crack echoed throughout the room, and the assistant fell to the floor, blood running from her chest. Another crack, and the politician slumped forward on the table, with a bullet wound in his head. Matt Krieger stood, reaching for his gun.
Marcus, stop!
But Marcus Flair didn't stop. He couldn't stop. His eyes didn't register the world around him, as he raised his gun once more, and planted a bullet in the director's head. Nothing can stop that man. The book will continue to gather sacrifices.